Lenny Foster. I'm a Dene, a Navajo from Fort Defiance, Arizona. And I say, be visible, be vocal, be mobile. And you adhere to these ways, changes will come about because you assume the responsibilities as such and the commitment that you make as a result of being visible at places, demonstrations, protests, to bring about changes, to be vocal, to express yourself as to the issues and the concerns that your peoples have, and the responsibility, obligations that you make. So I say, be visible, be seen, be vocal, be heard, be mobile, go.
Thank you. Want to say anything about Leonard Peltier? I know you're a spiritual advisor. Anything else?
Friend.
Okay.
He's my brother, and we need to free him from the Federal Bureau of Prisons. He's been locked up for 34 years. It's time that he comes home. And we're seeking his release from the federal penitentiaries. We need your help.
Thank you.
Solidarity, love, and support. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Land in South Dakota called Wounded Knee brought worldwide attention to the struggle of the American Indian. The American Indian movement is one of the peoples who came forward to help the Lakota people. This worldwide attention made the traditional headsmen and elders realize that we could take our issues, our treaty rights, into the international arena. Today, this is the United Nations. We first came to the United Nations in 1977. The International Indian Treaty Council is the political arm of the American Indian movement. Leonard Peltier, myself, and others included, we're part of that movement. Again, to seek redress of all the wrongs for our people, the lives, thefts of land, resources, water. We have to put a stop to that. Brought the Federal Bureau of Prisons, Federal Marshal upon the American Indian movement. We had 70
Hello, everyone. What should Wilf do to make the world a better place? Go for it. Or say anything you want. I don't care.
Free the women.
Krishna, what do you want? Pass your wisdom on to my students. Say anything.
Anything.
Yes.
Let women fight for peace.
Yeah, is there anybody to drink?
Okay.
Yeah, women fight for peace is very important. And in every country, there's a WILP section if there isn't. So connect to the section of the country you are at, United States in your case. WILP women do great things. Young WILPers and elderly WILPers, for example, there are the raging Grammys. They won't pay the taxes when it goes to military expenditure, you know, or the young WILPers, they go and rally and they do certain things. And now at this time, I think it is important we think about peace, what Krishna said, and we think about demilitarization and decommissioning all the nuclear power stations, no more nuclear power stations, no more uranium mining, and, you know, and human rights to indigenous peoples that are the first ones to be hit by this, and it is our co-responsibility. And we as women are in this particularly much.
Okay. Do you want anything to add,
World
Krishna?
peace is not possible without women. And if you don't give women their rights, they cannot fight for peace. This is all connected.
And to think of what we could do with the money that doesn't go to the army. You know, we could fund all the best education for everybody in the world if we didn't have to use all that money to be spent on arms. You know, conversion, that would be wonderful.
Okay.
So please find out for your students who the producers of armaments are in the world. Number one on the list, top. Why should I tell you?
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Joseph Bronca. I teach social work at Springfield College, and I integrate human rights and international social work into my classes. And I'm also the permanent representative to the United Nations in Geneva for the International Association of Schools of Social Work. Right now I'm taping this with my friend here, Leon Su. I'll be introducing him more in a few minutes. He's from the Kingdom of Hawaii. And we're at the 16th Council of the Human Rights Session in Geneva. And this is part of a series that I hope to be doing on human rights. So let me introduce my guest here. This is Leon Su.
Aloha.
Aloha. Aloha. Okay, got that right? Good to see you. And thank you for coming. Now, he's been involved with the reactivation of the lawful Hawaiian kingdom as an independent nation state since the early 1970s. He served for the past 11 years as the Minister of Foreign Affairs for the Hawaiian Kingdom. Before that, he served as the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs for 4 years. As the Minister of Foreign Affairs, he is working to develop trade and diplomatic relations between the Hawaiian Kingdom and other states, and he wants to revive Hawaii's still existing treaties. Minister Su is a member of the Cabinet Council of State that is responsible for the executive branch's decision-making and operations for the reactivated constitutional government. He is also the principal spokesperson for the Hawaiian Kingdom. We are very fortunate to be here speaking with him, and the floor is yours. This is about a half an hour show.
Well, thank you very much.
And I'd like you to say whatever you want, how we can help out the people of the kingdom. Maybe we shouldn't do anything. I don't know.
Okay, well,
give us a little history.
Okay, I'll start
where
with
things are now and where we can go. Okay.
Jump in if you have
Okay,
questions
thank you,
or
Leon.
anything you want to know. Well, the Hawaiian Kingdom was founded in 1810. Actually, prior to that, we were the Hawaiian Islands and a number of different chiefdoms and all that. But it was all reunited in 1796.
Okay. No, you can talk to the audience, whatever.
1796 by Kamehameha the Great. And 1810, he actually declared the nation as an independent nation. But all up to this time, it was being recognized and being honored as an independent nation. So in 1810, he declared it a united nation. And so he formalized it then. And we started to have trade agreements and talks with different other countries that were coming through Hawaii at the time. So we had some trade agreements with the United States and with Great Britain and a few others. They were just sort of like informal trade agreements. In 1843, his son, Kamehameha III, formalized Hawaii into a constitutional monarchy. And so he did away with the absolute monarchy, and he became a constitutional monarch, meaning that he was now beholden to the laws of the Hawaiian Kingdom. He was no longer the sole lawmaker. There was a legislature, and he was no longer the sole arbiter of laws, because there was now a Hawaiian Kingdom court. So the three branches of government in the Constitution are the executive branch, which was headed by the king, and the legislative branch, and then, of course, the judicial branch. And the legislature was elected. So it was a pretty modern constitutional format of a government. In 1843, he also was able to acquire formal recognition from Great Britain and France on the same day, and then the United States a few months later. And so the Hawaiian Kingdom then entered into the family of nations, and from then on, we started creating treaties between other nations, particularly European nations.
Right.
So we have treaties with Denmark and Norway, Spain, Italy, Germany, and all of the major European countries, as well as with Japan and China, and with Samoa, one of the Pacific Islands. So by the end of that 19th century, Hawaii actually had treaties and with 18 to 20 other nations, and diplomatic legations, 90 diplomatic legations all over the world, who had consulates and embassies all over the world. So Hawaii was fully engaged as a partner as a nation among other nations. So we contributed a lot to the discourse regarding neutrality. Hawaii was one of the first neutral nations declared. And so all of these types of things. Hawaii is quite a progressive nation that had moved from being sort of a Stone Age culture at the time of discovery in 1778, and 40, 50 years later, we were now fully engaged as a nation among nations. And becoming actually quite a progressive leader as well. Outlawed slavery way before the Americans did. And so anybody who was a slave who touched Hawaiian soil was free. And so,
Fascinating.
Mm-hmm. And so we were really progressive.
Tom's Cabin.
Yes, we were very progressive. And of course, Native Hawaiians constituted the 95% of the population of Hawaii. But we did have many immigrants. We had Asians and, of course, Europeans and Americans who were immigrants to Hawaii. Many of them decided to stay and become citizens of the Hawaiian Kingdom. So the Hawaiian Kingdom was not an exclusively racial kingdom. It was like many other nations today. Anyone who was born in the nation was considered a Hawaiian kingdom, or you could become naturalized if you had moved there. So the Hawaiian Islands also became very prominent in the area of trade, particularly sugar. And so a few Americans who had created some of these sugar companies in the Kingdom of Hawaii also began to become quite ambitious with expanding their business. There was an interesting thing that happened during the Civil War, which greatly expanded the sugar companies in Hawaii. And that is the Civil War, of course, the South seceded from the North. And that not only seceded politically, but it took away the sugar from sugar access to the North. So as a result, the North had to turn elsewhere for sugar, and they turned to Hawaii. So Hawaii had a huge boom during the Civil War for exporting sugar to the United States. After the Civil War, that boom eventually slowed down and came to a crawl. So they now had to figure out how to maintain the United States as their major export destination for sugar. And what they came up with was, let's annex Hawaii to the United States.
So we're having a show here that's being taped for television.
Yeah, excuse me?
Right, it's being taped for la tele.
Well,
Maintenant enregistrement pour
oh,
television.
sorry, I didn't saw the video.
Okay, that's
But
I'm
normally
sorry.
there's nothing in that room.
What?
Normally you shouldn't be here.
Oh.
That's the problem. That's why I would like you to. It's a long time.
15 more minutes.
Okay, but normally you cannot do that in a room.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So I didn't see you.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, sorry. Okay. Okay, sorry. I guess they'll cut it. Okay, thank you. It's only 15 minutes. Thank you.
Okay.
So you're really nice, aren't you?
So the sugar planters decided that the best thing to do would be to annex Hawaii to the United States. So in the early 1870s, they began to plot to see how they could do this. And so they created a plot in which they involved some members of the executive branch of the United States, particularly the military, in how to deliver Hawaii into the hands of the United States and become annexed to the United States. And of course, they enticed the United States with the promise of Pearl Harbor as a naval base. And of course, this was sought out, and the United States was very, very intrigued by this, or very seduced by this, because of course they needed Pearl Harbor, or they thought they would like Pearl Harbor if they were to expand into the Pacific. And they were having these types of ambitions at that time. So, so a plot was hatched, and eventually, 1893, several members of the Sugar Planters Association, called the Committee of Safety, decided that it was time to move and take over the One Kingdom. The Queen was about to institute a new constitution. Anyway, so they were opposed to that. So the sugar planters got together, and they met with the minister, the United States ambassador in Hawaii, and they got him to support them. And so they announced on a particular day, the Marines landed, the U.S. Marines landed in Honolulu, and bivouacked in front of the palace and trained their guns at the palace. And obviously an idea that they were going to be invading, or that this was an invasion. And then the sugar planters announced that they were now the government of Hawaii, and they had taken over the government. Of course, with the Marines there, the Queen did not want to start an international incident, or particularly when it could possibly be settled without any bloodshed. So she told her troops to stand down, and she yielded conditionally to the President of the United States. She didn't yield to these insurrectionists. She yielded to the President, who was still far away. And then she basically said that she yielded to the President and would trust in the United States' honor and integrity to return the kingdom after all the facts had become known. Because this was obviously a breach of international law. So she put it into this kind of language that said she's only stepping aside to avoid bloodshed, but she wants this settled. And so shortly after that, the United States the outgoing president at the time was Benjamin Harrison, and he immediately tried to get a treaty of annexation through Congress. But the Queen foiled that by filing her protest. And so it was enough to stall it until Grover Cleveland, a few weeks later, became the President of the United States. So one of his first actions as President of the United States was to withdraw this treaty of annexation from the Senate of the United States. And so by doing so, he basically said, we're going to get to the bottom of this. So he sent an investigator to Hawaii who conducted a 5-month investigation and submitted a report. And at the end of the report, the President of the United States presented to Congress the fact that the United States had acted totally unlawfully in this whole situation, and basically said that the United States was responsible to return the One Kingdom back to its lawful jurisdiction, to its lawful government. And so we waited for that to happen in Hawaii, and it didn't happen. The Congress decided to defund any attempt to return Hawaii. So the president was left without the ability to actually send any more troops to Hawaii to restore the kingdom. And the people who had seized power decided that they were going to dig their heels in, and they created what they call self-created a new government called the Republic of Hawaii. And then they decided to wait it out. So everything went into limbo at that point. 4 years later, a new president is elected in the United States. His name is William McKinley. And McKinley has ambitions. He's part of this whole manifest destiny.
So I noticed.
Yeah.
Other than Alaska, and he wanted to name a mountain after him.
Right. And so as part of the manifest destiny policy, he was looking at Hawaii, and they tried to annex Hawaii again. this time the Republic of Hawaii offered to annex Hawaii to the United States. The United States then wrote up a treaty, sent it to the Congress, to the Senate for ratification, and this time the Hawaiian people acted in a more concerted way and sent a large petition to the United States. The petition represented 97% of the people living in Hawaii.
Wow.
Opposed to annexation. And with that, annexation came to a screeching halt. They couldn't pass it up because obviously the people of Hawaii were not in agreement with it. Only 3% of the people of Hawaii were for annexation. The other 97% were against it. And so the Congress could not act on this. And so they put it aside. But a few months later, the Spanish-American War breaks out. And McKinley now sees this as an opportunity. And so they ran through Congress a resolution to seize Hawaii as a military base for Pearl Harbor as a port. Under military necessity, that's the actual words used in the legislation. So military necessity.
Military necessity.
Right. And so they seize Hawaii, and then they prosecute their war in the Western Pacific against the Spanish holdings there, the Philippines, Guam. And the U.S. is successful in defeating the Spanish, so they get the Philippines and Guam, and they also keep Hawaii. Well, of course, they got Cuba and Puerto Rico and Virgin Islands, but they decided to just sort of keep Hawaii within that settlement with Spain.
Time for a land grab, wasn't it?
And so, and of course, by now, the military base had burgeoned and become quite large in Hawaii, so they had the manpower and the firepower to maintain their occupation. And then the next year, they decided that Hawaii was to be annexed, 1898, and so they passed a resolution of annexation regarding Hawaii, not a treaty of annexation, a resolution, a unilateral resolution in Congress without any consideration for the Hawaiian people and the Hawaiian government. And so they annexed Hawaii and got away with it. In fact, there was a book written by a man named Stephen Kinzer from the New York Times, published it about 4 or 5 years ago, called Overthrow. Mm-hmm. And the subtitle of it is American Imperialism from Hawaii to Iraq.
Great.
And what he cites is that what they did in Hawaii set the tone for American imperialism all the way up until Iraq. Because they were able to get away with this in Hawaii. And so what they did was...
One second. Just want the viewers to know, I teach social work, and Jane Addams, who kind of founded a lot of this stuff, was a member of the American Anti-Imperialist Society, along with Mark Twain and the famous historian Charles Beard. So, continue.
Yes. So then the United States set upon a course of re-indoctrination of our people. So a lot of propaganda to get our people to remember, to think of themselves as Americans. They're saying, now you're Americans, you're all American citizens, let's all get along. And America's going to be this great, beneficent country to you and help you in every way. And so the first generation, of course, didn't buy it. But the second generation, and then they begin to realize, well, we better go along with the plan because otherwise our children will be severely hampered by not learning English and not, kowtowing to whatever they need to be. So the third generation, my generation, comes along, and we know nothing of the whole incident. And it wasn't until in the 1970s when this sort of spontaneous renaissance of Hawaiian culture and Hawaiian identity started to grow, that we began to realize that they told us we were adopted, but we had actually been kidnapped.
That history is written by the lies of the victors. Lawrence Ferlinghetti.
Right. And so we started at that time to examine our options and to try to find out what our actual status was. And we found out, after years of just trying this and trying that, and many years here at the United Nations and looking at their decolonization process and everything else, we found out and we determined that Hawaii is still a nation in continuity. And continuity means it never ended. Right. It means that we were never extinguished as a country. We had been overcome, we had been suppressed, and And there's been
And I
this fraud.
understand you have a Hawaiian passport.
That's true.
Honor. Do you have it on you?
Yes, I do, but it's in my bag again.
Forget it. Okay.
I'm going to get
That's
off
okay.
camera to do that.
Okay.
But, so as a nation in continuity, we decided, well, all we need to do is stand our nation back up and just say, here we are. We are the people of this nation. So many of us rescinded our U.S. citizenship, which we had been given at birth. And we said, no, we were born in the Hawaiian Kingdom. We actually are Hawaiian citizens or Hawaiian nationals. And so we actually reclaimed our true identity as Hawaiian nationals, as people of the Hawaiian soil. And so did many other people. There are thousands of people who have done this in Hawaii. And what we have said is that we're not going to participate any longer in the activities of our captors.
Right.
And we're going to really express ourselves as independent people within an independent nation. And that's what we've been doing. This has become quite a problem for the United States, of course. However, they don't see it as too big a problem because they think everything's all hunky-dory and they've got everything under control.
Yeah, could you talk a little bit more about that? I mean,
Sure.
how is the United States relating to you here?
Well, what the United States has attempted to do was throw us all kinds of bones.
Right.
So they write up all these various legislations and create programs, like probably about 200 programs now, for what they call Native Hawaiians.
Okay.
So what they're trying to do is identify us not as a nationality, but as an indigenous people within the United States.
Okay.
And so this is an insidious plot because they're saying you really are an Indian tribe, and so we're going to take care of you like we do with Indian tribes. And we're all saying, no, please don't. You know. So the most recent threat to us has been an 11-year battle in Congress, where the Congress was trying to make us into an Indian tribe, and we've been fighting it off. And we actually were successful. We finally defeated it in December of this past year, 2010. So the bill to create this recognized tribe of Hawaiians was defeated finally and killed. And so
The word tribe is also pejorative, isn't it?
it's very pejorative to us because we never were that. Plus, we were an independent nation.
I know,
right?
nation is it.
With treaties all over the world, 90 legations and all that. We were never indigenous to the United States. We never were part of the United States. So the whole fraud that has been used against us is now coming to light, and we are telling our story to the world, like programs such as this. We're telling people that, well, we don't hold any grudges. We just want our country back. And we want our country back in such a way that we are hoping that both the United States and the Hawaiian Kingdom can benefit. It'll be a win-win situation. So we're looking for a graceful way in which we can offer the United States to lead.
Yeah, I think you're talking about the right to self-determination.
Yes.
And the right to self-determination, well, in Mohawk, I do know means living nicely together.
That's right.
And somehow the governments feel threatened by it or something.
Right.
This is racism, you know, people are going to go on the warpath or something. I don't know.
And that's why they continue to try to get scare people about our movement, as if we're a bunch of racists trying to run off the white man. But we're not doing that. Actually, see, Hawaii is a very unusual society in that everybody who's come to Hawaii actually gets absorbed into Hawaii as part of the culture. And so we're a multi-ethnic nation. We're people from any kind of ethnicity you can imagine live in Hawaii, and they're intermarried with other ethnicities. So to say that we want to separate ourselves out as a Native Hawaiians or just ethnic Hawaiians is ridiculous. And we can't even do it because we're all intermarried. I'm Hawaiian Chinese. My father came from China, and everybody, almost everybody, there are very few pure Hawaiians, pure Hawaiian blooded. Everybody else is mixed up, and in a nice way. And there are people with 10, 12 ethnicities in Hawaii.
Well, the history of cultural diversity is one of cooperation.
Right, and we celebrate that.
Celebration.
I'm proud of my Chinese side as well as my Hawaiian, and people are like that in Hawaii. So it's really ludicrous to think that we would reject that and go and say that only Native Hawaiians have any right to be there. And so that's one of the obstacles we have to overcome, because the U.S. keeps trying to imply that this is what we want, and we don't want it at all. And the U.S. keeps on trying to redefine this, like making us an Indian tribe, and saying, okay, only those of you with Hawaiian blood, or with 50% of Hawaiian blood, can be part of this tribe. And that, again, is just so offensive to us. So anyway, we are fighting this battle, and we are winning, actually. We have the sympathy of people around the world,
Yes.
because Hawaii itself has been harmless and actually has been highly respected for its spirit of aloha, of caring
Yes.
and loving for one another. That we actually, if it comes down to a battle of public relations, we've got it won hands down. As you can see, the United States public relations, on the other hand, stinks. You know.
Also,
So-
I do have to say this: when I was working on my dissertation, I was doing a study of human rights in the various states, and this is back in the early 90s. But I found out that in Hawaii, at the time, there's roughly only 3% lacked health insurance. And I think that was because of the collective character of the Hawaiian
Right.
people, Asians, whatever, and there was a sense of caring.
Right.
And the other states was, like, at the time, 20, 30%, 40%. So that illustrated to me
Right.
that it must mirror some kind of collective caring.
We've been having talks about colonialism, over the years, and actually there
Yeah, this
are
conference,
serious defects or detriments to colonialism, and one of them has to do with the supplanting of the native culture or the culture of that area. And this is one of the great things that has happened. One of the bad things that has happened to Hawaii is that we have become so Americanized, or many people, they think like Americans and they act like Americans, and they take on the values and the economic structures and those types of things which drive the American society. And so there has been this tremendous loss that we have felt, which we are working hard to regain, of our identity as to how we see and how we approach things as people. We are people-oriented, we're not money-oriented.
Yeah, consumer-oriented,
Yeah,
individualistic,
Right.
competitive.
Exactly. All of those things are so antithetical to who we are as Hawaiians or as the Hawaiian culture. And so this has been a big battle, because many of our people had been seduced into that American identity.
Well, this is
And-
going on throughout the world, the
Right.
American way of
But
life.
since the 1970s, we've been able to start to reverse that, and this has
Yes.
been the driving force behind it. We're recovering our identity. We're recovering who we are. We know who we are. We're recovering our language, and among our young people, there's a tremendous growth of this identity of being Hawaiian and a sense of place and a sense of belonging to this place. So that is what is actually at the root of what's going on with the political move to restore our Hawaiian kingdom. So the restoration of the Hawaiian kingdom is actually a legal and a political effort on the part of many people who have spent many years at this, redefining what our political status is and then acting upon it, and actually being that political entity of a Hawaiian national or a Hawaiian citizen or subject. And so by doing this, we actually encourage others to start to look at this. And so the movement has been growing for many years. And places like here at the United Nations, where we're able to share our story, we're beginning to get the attention and sympathy of many other nations. So you talked about my passport, so that's a very interesting thing, because in the passport, besides the regular things you find in a passport, we also have a list of the nations with which we still have treaties.
Yeah, at the end of the show, I will do something.
Okay. And those treaties are still intact, just like our nation is still intact. And so it's a matter of really reactivating those treaties, getting those treaties alive again, so that the other nations do acknowledge that the treaty is still in existence. Yeah.
So sounds great. I'm wondering, you get any hassle yourself? I mean, from the U.S. government, or I'm just wondering, how are things around here? I mean, have you had coffee with a U.S. representative, or
Not really. At the UPR back in November, we were pretty blunt and
That's the Universal
straightforward.
Periodic Review. The United States went before the Human Rights Council. It's on the internet.
In November.
In November.
And we were pretty blunt with them that, we want our nation back. We're working together with Alaska, by the way. That was also captured.
Yes, that's a show tomorrow. Okay.
In that same act that the United States did in 1959. But so we are working here just to tell our story. But no, I have not received any type of resistance or hurdles that I need to jump over from the United States. I suspect that they will
You don't
start.
have gold in Hawaii or
Well,
I'm sorry,
that's-
I'm
well,
supposed to be neutral. I'm sorry.
No, that's
I should
very
be
good.
neutral.
That's a
I'm
very
not
good
being
point.
very- okay.
And one of the reasons is because the necessity. Well, we know that what drives colonialism and imperialism is economics. Is that when something is desirable and a bigger country wants to take it, then it's imperialism. That we take it, and then they take the resource or somehow exploit whatever resources there are. In the case of Alaska, for instance, the resources are enormous. Oil and gold, and silver, and
Water,
nickel,
even.
water, salmon. Incredible wealth that they have there that belong to the native Alaskans.
Right.
But of course, the U.S. corporations have moved in and they're now controlling things.
And they also force the natives to have some type of corporate model.
Right.
Well, Ron will talk about
we'll
that
talk
tomorrow,
about it.
ambassador from Alaska. Okay, yeah.
But in Hawaii, the main commodity that we have is our location and as a military strategic position in the Pacific. And of course, that was really quite evident in World War II with the bombing of Pearl Harbor that brought the United States into the war because the Pearl Harbor was bombed.
Yeah.
But that military strategic necessity is not quite as important anymore. The United States and with the way wars are fought, they don't necessarily have to have this kind of a base as a front base.
All these drones.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can basically, and they're just a matter of a couple more hours away from the West Coast, as far as sending missiles and things like that. So they can act. Hawaii is dispensable at this point. And so we were talking this morning at our side event, and we were talking about the fact. So what makes Hawaii valuable anymore? And actually nothing. We're not valuable to the United States for them to keep. In fact, we've become more of a liability to them because of the cost. We've turned into a welfare state like the U.S. has done in so many other places.
Yeah, there's not many opportunities.
Yeah, they ruined our agriculture, they ruined everything else, and so now we're totally dependent on them,
Of course.
for importing our food. We import 90% of food to Hawaii, which we could be growing ourselves.
Of course.
But because of the land situation and the titles and things like that. Anyway, but Hawaii is becoming more of a burden to the United States. So we're thinking that this may be the opportunity for a graceful way for the United States to withdraw. And we can offer them some pretty good deals. And we'll get off their welfare rolls. Of course, there's still reparations and things like that for the use of our country for 118 years.
Yes.
But
Well, good luck.
Good.
President Obama will get out at that convention, conference in Durban over the issue of reparations.
yeah,
That was another.
but that's good. Well, President Obama is from Hawaii. He was born in Hawaii, which raises, of course, a very interesting thing
Why
about
didn't he walk out?
his nationality. Because we're saying the Hawaiian Kingdom never ceased. So Hawaii is still the Hawaiian Kingdom. So when he was born there in 1961, he was born in the Hawaiian Kingdom, not in the United States. So this gives a whole new twist to the whole brother situation, which they haven't even thought about yet. But we've been sitting back kind of smirking to ourselves, saying, okay, let's see how far this goes. But as we return our Hawaiian Kingdom, that actually then disqualifies Obama from being president of the United States. So we have that to hold over him too.
Good. I noticed that half hour is sort of coming up, but I just have a couple of questions. Last night over dinner, you want to explain to the viewers that story about you were going to go on a show and someone said something
Oh,
about,
yes.
well, are you going to
Well,
you have a
well-
hula skirt? And then I'm going to ask you to just mention to our viewers how we can help out, what should we do,
Okay.
and then I guess we'll say aloha.
All right.
Unless you have something
Okay,
else you
the
want to
little
add.
story was
Okay.
that I was working with National Geographic on a wonderful story of the Hawaiian Renaissance.
Yes.
What happened was that a canoe was built, a double-hulled voyaging canoe. Was built very much like the ones of our Polynesian ancestors. And we wanted to prove that our ancestors were not lost sailors or fishermen drifting from island to island, but that we actually deliberately found these islands and settled these islands. And so in 1976, a historic voyage in that canoe took place. It's a 60-foot double-hulled voyaging canoe, very ocean-worthy. But we also did it with non-instrument navigation, sailed from Hawaii to Tahiti and then back,
Wow.
and proved that our ancestors were really tremendous navigators.
Right.
They had accomplished settling all the Pacific Islands, the Polynesians had, all the Pacific Islands 1,500 years before Christopher Columbus was born.
Right.
Yeah.
I believe it. Yeah.
And so the Europeans were still clinging to the shores when we were out there in the open ocean and treating it as our major highway, not as an obstacle. And so, so I was invited because we had finished this film and it was going to be shown called The Voyage of the Hokulea.
Uh-huh.
And I was invited to a talk show in Los Angeles. It was a national talk show, and they were going to talk about this wonderful new film. So I get to the studio that morning, and the co-producer meets me and said, we're glad you're here. Where are the hula skirts?
Yeah.
And I said, what? And she said, you're going to be teaching the host to do the hula. So where are the skirts? And I said, I'm not here for that. And I walked out of the show, called National Geographic and told them, don't book this kind of a show anymore. But
Wow.
this was just the idea of the preconceptions that people have brought away. Here was an historic moment in time of the recapturing of our identity, which actually triggered throughout the Pacific this huge renaissance of Polynesians and Micronesians and Melanesians. This whole confidence in who we are as a people and where we came from. And since in the last 30 years, has been that was the major trigger that just created this whole new cultural identity. And so here was this radio TV station wanted to belittle it, but turn it into a little hula show. But anyway, the way that
Well,
you can,
minority groups are kind of
Yeah.
belittled.
yeah, but the way that you can help us.
Yeah, what could we do now?
Okay.
Okay. Should we do nothing, leave you alone?
No,
It's your
no,
gig or what?
no. We really need your
Bring it
help.
together. Okay, what could we do? And then we'll
Main
say
thing
aloha.
is to spread the word about who we are and what we're doing. And you can do so by going to a website,
Okay.
and that's www.hawaiiankingdom.net.
Okay, HawaiianKingdom.net. Okay.
Right, and in it there are all these questions and answers and things like that, which tell you a lot more about our story, and then also tells you about where we're going with this. We've reformed our government. We're taking over control again of our nation. We have reformed our courts, and we're about to actually activate those courts so that we can try our own cases according to Hawaiian Kingdom law. Laws that are
Self-determination.
still in existence since the 1890s.
Okay,
So that's where we are.
sounds great. So that'd be a good beginning, and it's great to have you.
Well,
And
thank you very much.
great hanging out with you here at the conference, and aloha, I guess.